Okay, so I wanted to talk about real quick just a couple key differences between Russia's economy, sort of average economy, household economy, versus America's. One really big factor, because you see a lot of people try to push this idea that Russia is a better country than the US, China is a better country than the US, and there's a real demoralization campaign trying to breed discontent and a real blurry vision of how good we actually have it in the US. So I just wanted to run through a quick prompt that I had in my Google Gemini search. So the average gross monthly salary in Russia is about 1,034 US dollars. Now that's gross. There's a 13% flat personal income tax. Um, there's regional variance. So you've got more resource rich northern territories or your big cities. Um, there is a lot of inflation there because of um, international strain. Um, so I asked what's the regional average looking for annual. So the average annual gross wage in Russia is roughly about 12,400 US dollars. Now it's heavily skewed by a few hyper wealthy hubs. So it's going to be under that for your like normal sort of regional or rural area. Um, it broke down the sectors. So where there's Arctic mining, it's about 28,200 US dollars. Moscow City, 26,400. Yamalo, Nenets, Akrug. There's gas oil there, 26,400. Magadan region, there's mining. Um, Mid-range and industrial regions, it's calling it a mid-tier regional capital or capitals. Siberian industrial zones, 11,000 to 14,000 US dollars. Now this is annual gross. This is before that. What did we say? 13 or 14% flat. 13% flat personal income tax. So this isn't take-home pay. Now, lower income districts, smaller towns, agrarian southern republics, North Caucasus districts, Chechnya, Ingushetia. I'm butchering these names. $7,500 to 8,500 US dollars. Rural provincial towns, 4,800 to 6,000. Now, that's pretty low. Well, so then I asked, because this is something in economics where they talk about, measuring the value of a basket of goods. So I asked, what would be in an average basket of goods for a household? And what's the dollar value comparing US to Russia? So average consumer grocery basket is about $250 to $400 monthly per person, compared to 80 to 120 in Russia. A dollar goes roughly 2 to 6 to 2.8 times further on groceries in Russia. But the average Russian household spends a much higher percentage of their income on basic food items. So just to touch on that, Russians frequently spend 30% to 50% of their paychecks on food. So if you're in like the poorest rural area, right, and you're spending, you're earning maybe $4,500. That was that per month. That was per year. That was, geez, you're spending half of that a month on food, whatever that breaks down per month. So the Russian basket would have seasonal root vegetables, kefir, sour cream, butter, pork, chicken bread, sunflower oil, black tea. U.S. basket would have more fresh produce, beef, poultry, processed foods, more prepared meals, snacks, and soft drinks. Okay, so similar items in basket of goods would be like dozen eggs, liter milk, 1 kilogram of rice, loaf of bread, and 1 kilogram of apples. So you're seeing a lower average Russian price, but you got to remember that their gross annual and gross monthly is way, way, way lower, and they're spending a much higher percentage of that on food. Um, Americans spend roughly about 7 to 11% of disposable income on food. Let's see. I asked what percentage does the average Russian spend on energy versus American. Russians will spend about 9% to 11% on essential residential utilities. American is about 4% to 5%. Yeah, so the average Russian is living very, very meanly. compared to the average American. And here's the thing: is their government has to restrict their media, what they can see of other countries, because there's not only, you know, imagining that the grass could be greener on the other side, but it's knowing that it's greener on the other side. So Russia specifically needs their people to believe that the grass is not greener on our side, and their people can never know that it is. If they knew that, for one thing, their government's doing them dirty, they're keeping them in poverty, then they're going to demand more out of their government, or they're just going to vote with their feet if that's possible. The other thing is that they're also demoralizing America. So they're telling Americans, like, hey, you've got so much to complain about. There's so many ways that your government is corrupt. You guys are the worst. If you can get people to believe that it's not important, that they're actually thriving and they're doing well, then your people are not going to believe that they actually deserve a good life, And also, there's this, influence operation where they're being told that life in Russia is great, and that also that digital barrier between Americans and Russians. You're not going to see a podcast from, your average farmer in Russia in a really rural area making $4,500 a year, US dollars, spending 2250, on food, just food, that whole year for yourself as an individual. So that's not even talking about, that's an individual. That's not even like for a family. So if you have to have two people working in a family and you're supporting children, then you're spending a lot more on food, more bodies, less income earners. It's no wonder that they use child labor over there, because they have to. So there's a very real difference between how well we have it over here, whether or not you agree on finer points of our government versus their government, or our government versus the previous version of our government, administration to administration. That doesn't matter. Our economy, our people, by miles, are doing way, way better than the average Russian. I mean, imagine the difference between spending 50% of your monthly income on food, 50%, versus 10% of your disposable monthly income on food. I mean, there's no comparison.